My name is Elias Thorne. I'm 72 years old, and I live in Oskaloosa, Iowa. They say blood is thicker than water, but on this farm, I learned that greed can turn blood into poison quicker than a rattlesnake bite. I've been waking up at 5:30 for 50 years. Same time, same sunrise bleeding gold over the east field. Coffee first, black, no sugar, poured into the chipped mug Martha gave me on our 25th anniversary. The porch boards creak in the same spots they've creaked since my grandfather built this house in 1947. 120 acres of black Iowa soil, corn in the summer, soybeans in rotation, cattle grazing the western pasture near the creek. This land raised 3 generations of Thorns. It buried 2. Martha passed 4 years ago in October. Pancreatic cancer. Quick and cruel. The house got quieter after that. Not lonely exactly. Just settled. I still talk to her sometimes out loud, when I'm checking the fence line or splitting wood. Tell me I'm not crazy yet. If you believe a man's word should mean something, and that respecting your elders still matters in this world, do me a favor. Hit that like button and subscribe. I'd appreciate it. And drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I want to know who's out there listening. My morning routine hasn't changed. Coffee, porch, then a slow walk along the property line, checking posts, looking for washouts after rain. The land talks if you know how to listen. A fence post leaning means the cattle are pushing. Mud churned up near the creek means the deer are running the tree line at night. You learn these things when you've lived somewhere long enough to see the seasons turn 70 times. I thought I'd die here, peacefully, on my terms. That was before my son decided the farm was worth more than the memories. Mark hadn't visited in 2 years, not since the Christmas after his mother's funeral, when he spent 45 minutes on the phone with his office and left before dessert. He called maybe once a month. Short conversations, weather, health, awkward silences. Then last Tuesday, he called and said he was coming for dinner. Friday night. Had something important to discuss. I knew it wasn't good news. Good news doesn't need an appointment. I spent Friday morning cleaning the kitchen, making beef stew the way Martha used to. Carrots, potatoes, a little Worcestershire for depth. I even ironed a shirt. Not because I was trying to impress him, because that's what you do when your son comes home. You show respect, even when you're not sure you'll get it back. The stew was simmering when I heard it. A low rumble on the gravel drive, too smooth for a truck. I stepped onto the porch and watched a black luxury SUV roll up the lane, dust swirling behind it like a wake. The chrome gleamed. The tires looked like they'd never touched dirt before today. Mark stepped out in a charcoal suit. No tie, white shirt open at the collar. Shoes so shiny I could see, my reflection in them from 20 feet away. His hair was gelled back, and he wore sunglasses, even though the sun was already dipping behind the barn. He didn't look at the oak tree where I'd hung his tire swing when he was 6. Didn't glance at the barn where he used to chase the cats every summer. He looked right past it all, staring at the acreage like a butcher looks at a side of beef, calculating the cuts. "Dad," he said, extending his hand instead of a hug. I shook it. His palm was soft, no calluses, not a single scar. "Mark, good to see you." He nodded toward the house. "The place looks the same." That wasn't a compliment. We walked inside, and Mark's eyes swept the living room like he was appraising it for an estate sale. The worn couch, the framed photos on the mantel, the crocheted Afghan Martha made during her last winter. He didn't say anything, but I saw the judgment in the tight line of his mouth. "Stew's ready," I said. "Are you hungry?" "Sure." I ladled out 2 bowls and set them on the kitchen table. Mark sat down, pulled out his phone and started typing. I waited. He kept typing. I picked up my spoon and started eating. After a minute, he set the phone face down on the table, but kept glancing at it every few seconds, like it might explode if he didn't check. "How's work?" I asked. "Busy. Always busy. Still doing the consultant thing. Strategic advising, yeah." He lifted his spoon, stirred the stew, and didn't take a bite. "You not hungry?" "It's fine. Just ate a late lunch." "Then why'd you say you were hungry?" I kept eating. The silence stretched out, thick and uncomfortable. Mark tapped his fingers on the table. His knee bounced under it. I could see the nervous energy radiating off him like heat off asphalt in July. "The place is really showing its age, Dad," he said finally, looking around. "The roof's sagging on the west side. Porch could use new boards. When's the last time you painted?" 2 years ago. Did the barn myself. I mean the house. The house is fine." He gave a tight smile. "It's an asset, Dad. A major asset. But it's depreciating if you're not maintaining it properly. An asset." He called the house where he grew up, where his mother died, an asset. "I maintain it just fine," I said evenly. Mark sighed and leaned back in his chair. He pulled a folded piece of paper from his jacket pocket and smoothed it out on the table. It was a printout. Color, glossy, market trends, property values, graphs with arrows pointing up. "The real estate market in this county is peaking," he said, sliding it toward me. "Developers are moving in. They're buying up farms, consolidating land for residential developments. Suburbs are expanding. People want space now, especially after the pandemic. Rural property within an hour of Des Moines? It's prime." I looked at the paper, didn't touch it. "This farm's been in our family since 1889, I said quietly. "Your great-great-grandfather broke this ground with a mule and a plow." "I know the history, Dad. Do you?" His jaw tightened. He tapped the paper. "What I know is that you're 72 years old, living alone on 120 acres. You can't fully work anymore. That's not sustainable. And when something happens to you, and it will, this whole thing falls on me. The taxes, the upkeep, the liability. Nothing's falling on you. I'm managing fine. For now." There it was. The edge in his voice. The impatience. Mark pulled out his phone, swiped a few times, turned the screen toward me. A photo of a clean, modern apartment. Big windows, hardwood floors, a kitchen that looked like something out of a magazine. "This is a senior living community in Ankeny," he said. "Independent living. Your own unit. Maintenance included. Social activities. Medical staff on site. You could actually enjoy your retirement instead of breaking your back every day for nothing. I like my back just fine. Dad, I'm not moving." He exhaled hard through his nose, the way he used to when he was a teenager and didn't get his way. He picked up his phone again, scrolled, stopped. His face went tight. He typed something fast, then set it down harder than necessary. "We need to talk about equity," he said. "Equity? Yes, liquidity. Your financial future, our financial future." He said that he had no right to it. I set my spoon down and looked him straight in the eye. "You didn't come here to check on me. You came here to ask me to sell." Mark didn't blink. "I came here to help you see the reason." Dinner was over. Mark hadn't touched his stew. I cleared the bowls and set them in the sink while he sat at the table, drumming his fingers, waiting for me to sit back down. I took my time, run the water, wiped the counter, let him stew in his own impatience. When I finally sat, he reached into his briefcase, the kind with a combination lock, and pulled out a glossy brochure. He laid it flat on the table between us like a contract. The cover showed a rendering of neat suburban houses, wide streets, young families walking dogs. The title read, "Thorn Meadows, a modern community rooted in tradition." I stared at it. My name, our name, slapped onto a fantasy neighborhood that didn't exist yet. "This is what the developer is proposing," Mark said, his voice picking up speed, slipping into a pitch he'd probably practiced. "They'd buy the full 120 acres, subdivide it into quarter-acre lots, 60 homes, maybe 70, parks, green space. They'd even keep some of the original trees, incorporate them into the design. It's tasteful, Dad. Respectful. Respectful," I repeated. "Yes, and the offer is generous. More than generous. 7 figures." He said it like I was supposed to be impressed, like a number on a page could replace a century of roots. "You already talked to them," I said. "Not a question. I've had preliminary conversations, just to gauge interest. Without asking me, I'm asking now." I looked at the brochure again. The fake trees, the fake people, the fake life they wanted to build on top of my real one. "You've been planning this," I said slowly. "For how long?" Mark shifted in his seat. "It's not about planning. It's about timing. The market won't stay like this forever. If we wait too long, Dad, I'm trying to help you. You're sitting on a gold mine and you're too stubborn to see it. You could sell, take the money, live comfortably for the rest of your life. No more winters shoveling snow. No more worrying about the furnace breaking or the roof leaking. You'd be free. I am free. You're trapped. You just don't see it. His phone buzzed. He glanced at it. His face went pale for a split second. Then he flipped it over, screen down. What would your mother say? I asked quietly. Mark froze. His eyes flicked to mine, and for just a moment, I saw something like shame. Then it hardened into defensiveness. Mom would want you to be practical. She'd want you safe and taken care of. She'd want me here, where I buried her, where I promised her I'd stay. She'd want you to rest, Mark snapped. She spent 40 years watching you kill yourself on this land. Don't pretend you're honoring her memory by doing the same thing until you drop dead in a field somewhere. I stood up, slow, steady. My chair scraped loud against the floor. You don't get to tell me what your mother wanted, I said, my voice low and harder than I'd used with him in 20 years. And you sure as hell don't get to use her name to sell my land. Mark stood too, his face flushed. This isn't just your land, Dad. It's my inheritance, my future. I have a say in this. There it was. The truth is he'd been dancing around all night. He didn't come here to help me. He came here to claim what he thought was already his. You think because your name might be on a will someday, that gives you the right to make decisions now? I asked. I think you're being selfish. I think you're holding on to something out of pride, and it's going to cost both of us. He called it liberating my assets. I called it selling the graves of my ancestors for a pile of paper that would burn in a heartbeat. Mark grabbed his briefcase, shoved the brochure back inside. Think about it, he said, his voice tight. I'll be back next week. We'll talk when you've had time to process. He walked to the door, stopped, turned back. I'm not the bad guy here, Dad. I'm trying to save you from yourself. Then he left. The SUV roared to life, spitting gravel as it tore back down the lane. I stood in the kitchen, alone, the stew gone cold on the stove. And I knew, deep in my bones, this wasn't over, not by a long shot. A man's home is his castle, but when the enemy has a key to the gate and calls you Dad, the walls don't feel so high anymore. Mark didn't go back to Chicago. He checked into the Sunrise Motel on Highway 92, the kind of place with weekly rates and a neon sign that flickers all night. I know because Mrs. Henderson at the post office told me she'd seen his SUV parked there 3 mornings in a row. Monday afternoon, he showed up unannounced with a woman in a burgundy blazer and too much perfume. She had a clipboard and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Dad, this is Karen Shipley, Mark said, walking right past me into the house like he still lived there. She's with Heartland Realty. I thought it'd be helpful if she gave us a professional assessment. I stood in the doorway, blocking her path. I didn't invite an assessment. Karen's smile tightened. Mr. Thorne, I completely understand this is your home. I'm just here to provide information. No pressure, no commitment, just a friendly conversation about what your options might be. My option is you leaving my property. Mark's face went red. Dad, don't be rude. She drove all the way from... I don't care if she drove from Mars. Get her off my land. Karen handed me a business card anyway, her hand trembling slightly. If you change your mind, Mr. Thorne, we're here to help. They left. Mark didn't look back. Tuesday morning, I was checking the south fence line when I saw them. 2 men in reflective vests and hard hats, standing at the edge of my property near the road, holding surveying equipment. One of them had a tripod set up, peering through the scope toward my barn. I walked over, my boots crunching through the frost. You boys lost? The taller one looked up, startled. Just doing a boundary survey, sir. Public easement. This is private property. You're standing on it. We have authorization from... I don't care who authorized it. Get off my land. They packed up quickly, but not before I saw the logo on their truck. Thorne Meadows Development, LLC. The company didn't even exist yet, and they were already measuring my grave. I went back to the house, pulled my Remington 870 from the cabinet, checked that it was unloaded, and carried it back outside. Sat on the porch with it across my lap. Didn't point it at anyone. I didn't need to. The message was clear. They didn't come back. The phone started ringing Wednesday. The first call came at 7 in the morning. Mr. Thorne, this is David Garrett with Midwest Land Acquisitions. I understand you might be considering selling your property, and I wanted to discuss. I hung up. Second call at 9:30. Different companies. Same script. Third call at noon. A man with a thick accent, claiming to represent interested international investors. I unplugged the phone. Mark showed up that evening, furious. You're making this harder than it needs to be. I'm not making anything hard. I'm living my life. You're the one turning it into a circus. Those people are trying to help you. I didn't ask for help. You're being unreasonable. I'm being clear. There's a difference. He stood there on my porch, breathing hard, his fists clenched at his sides like he wanted to hit something. For a moment, I saw the little boy who used to throw tantrums when he didn't get his way. But this wasn't a toy he wanted. This was my life. I'm not giving up, he said quietly. I can't. That's when I heard it. Not defiance. Desperation. Thursday, I drove into town to see Judge Samuel Whitmore. We'd known each other for 40 years, served on the church council together, back when Martha was still alive. He retired from the bench 5 years ago, but his mind was still sharp as a tack. His house smelled like pipe tobacco and old books. He poured us both coffee, and we sat in his study, surrounded by law volumes and framed commendations. Elias, he said after I'd explained the situation, you said Martha passed away 4 years ago. Did you probate the estate? Didn't need to. Everything was in both our names, joint ownership. When she died, it all transferred to me automatically. Samuel nodded slowly, but his face looked troubled. And the deed, you're certain it's clear? As far as I know? You need to be more than far as you know. If the deed was joint tenancy with right of survivorship, you're fine. But if it was tenancy in common, or if there was any ambiguity in the will, Mark could argue he has a claim as an heir. Iowa law can get tricky with agricultural property, especially if there's a question of intent. My stomach went cold. You think he could force a sale? If he could prove co-ownership or substantial interest, he could petition for a partition action. That's where the court forces a sale and divides the proceeds. It's rare, but it happens, especially when there's family conflict. I set my coffee down. My hand was shaking. I need to check that deed. You need to do more than check it. You need to have a lawyer review it. Today, Samuel gave me a name. Angela Reyes, a property attorney in Pella. He called her himself, got me an appointment for Monday morning. I drove home slowly, my mind racing. I'd always assumed the farm was mine, clear and simple. Martha and I built this life together. When she passed, it became mine. That's how it was supposed to work. But now I wasn't sure, and uncertainty is a poison that spreads fast. I pulled into the driveway and saw Mark's SUV parked by the barn. He was sitting on the porch steps, waiting. We need to talk, he said. I'm done talking. Dad, please. There was something different in his voice. The anger was gone. What was left sounded worse. It sounded like fear. Guilt is a heavy stone to carry, especially when your own son is the one stitching it into your pockets. Mark was drunk. Not stumbling, fall-down drunk, but the kind where the edges blur and the truth starts leaking out. I could smell the whiskey on him from 6 feet away. Can I come in? He asked. I should have said no, should have sent him back to his motel to sleep it off. But he was my son, and when your son asks to come inside, you let him, even when every instinct tells you it's a mistake. We sat at the kitchen table. I didn't offer him coffee. I didn't want him to stay long. I'm sorry, he said, his voice thick. About the realtor, about the surveyors. I'm handling this all wrong. You're damn right you are. He rubbed his face with both hands. His eyes were red, either from drinking or crying or both. You don't understand what it's like, Dad. My world is falling apart. Then tell me. Explain it to me. He laughed, bitter and short. Where do I even start? The consulting firm I worked for folded 6 months ago. The market shifted, clients dried up, and I got caught in the downsizing. I tried to start my own thing, but you need capital for that. You need connections. I had neither. You could have called, asked for help. I did, in my own way. I kept thinking I could turn it around, that I'd hit a streak and everything would balance out, and I wouldn't have to come crawling back here like a failure. You're not a failure. Yes, I am. He looked at me, and I saw something I hadn't seen in 20 years. Vulnerability. Raw and bleeding. I lost everything, Dad. The condo's in foreclosure. My car's leased and 3 months behind. I can't pay my credit cards. I can't pay my rent. I'm 48 years old and I'm drowning. My chest tightened. Every father wants to save his son, no matter how old that son gets. It's wired into you, deep as bone. How much do you need? I asked quietly. Mark's eyes widened. What? How much would it take to get you back on your feet? Not the farm. Cash. I've got savings. Retirement accounts. It's not millions, but it's something. For a second, hope flickered across his face. Then it died, replaced by something darker. Resignation, maybe, or calculation. It's not enough, he said. You don't even know how much I'm offering. It doesn't matter. Unless you're sitting on $500,000 liquid, it's not enough. $500,000. The number hit me like a fist to the gut. Jesus, Mark, what did you do? He stood up, started pacing. It wasn't supposed to be like this. I had a system. I was winning for a while. Then the losses started piling up, and I thought I could win it back. I kept thinking, one more hand, one more game, and I'd be square. But the hole just kept getting deeper. You gambled. I invested, he snapped. In poker, online platforms, some casino trips. It's all legal, Dad. Don't look at me like I'm some kind of criminal. You owe $500,000. More than that, actually. But $500,000 would cover the urgent part. The part where people stop calling and threatening. Threatening? Mark went still. He turned away, staring out the window at the dark fields. I borrowed from some people. Private lenders. They're not patient. The room went cold. Who, Mark? Who did you borrow from? It doesn't matter. It matters to me. He turned back, his face hard now, the vulnerability replaced by something desperate and mean. You sit on millions, Dad. Millions. This farm is worth more than you'll ever spend in your lifetime, and you're hoarding it like some kind of dragon guarding treasure. Meanwhile, I'm out here drowning, and you won't throw me a rope. I just offered you a rope. You said it wasn't enough, because it's not. Your savings might buy me a month, maybe 2. Then what? I'm back where I started, and you're broke too. But if you sell this place, we both walk away whole. You get a clean retirement. I get a clean slate. Everybody wins. Except I lost my home. You lose a burden, Mark said, his voice rising. You're 72 years old, living alone in a house that's too big and on land you can't work anymore. You're one fall, one heart attack, one bad winter away from disaster. And when that happens, what then? Who's going to take care of you? Who's going to manage this place? Me? I can't even manage my own life. He was shouting now, his face flushed, his hands shaking. I need this, Dad. I need you to do this one thing for me. Just this one thing. Sign the papers. Take the money. Let me fix my life. I stood up slowly, my chair scraping the floor. I looked at my son, this man I'd raised, taught to ride a bike, helped with homework, walked through his mother's funeral, and I barely recognized him. If I sell this farm to save you, I said quietly, what's to stop you from losing that money too? What's to stop you from gambling it away in 6 months and coming back for more? Mark's face went white, then red. You don't trust me. Right now? No, I don't. He grabbed his jacket, yanked it on with sharp, angry movements. You care more about dirt than your own flesh and blood. That's not true, isn't it? He headed for the door, stopped with his hand on the knob. Mom would be ashamed of you. The door slammed. The SUV roared to life. Gravel sprayed. I stood in the kitchen, alone, my heart hammering in my chest, and I realized the hole Mark was in wasn't just deep, it was bottomless. I always taught Mark that the truth is like a bobber on a fishing line. You can hold it down for a while, but eventually, it's going to pop back up. Sunday morning, I didn't go to church. I went to town. The first stop was the bank. I walked in at 8:30, right when they opened, and asked to speak with Tom Mercer, the branch manager. He'd handled my accounts for 15 years, and he knew discretion when he saw it. We sat in his office. The door closed. Tom, I need to know if anyone's been asking questions about my accounts. Specifically my son. Tom's face went carefully neutral. Elias, you know I can't discuss other customers' inquiries. He's not a customer. He's my son, and I need to know if he's been sniffing around my finances. Tom sighed, leaned back in his chair. He came in 3 weeks ago, asked about joint accounts, estate planning, power of attorney, general questions. I told him he'd need to speak with you directly for specifics. Did he ask about the farm? The deed? He asked if you had any outstanding liens or mortgages. I told him that information was confidential. I nodded slowly. Thanks, Tom. I appreciate your discretion. Elias, Tom said as I stood to leave, whatever's going on, be careful. Family and money. It's a bad mix. The second stop was the Bluebird Diner on Main Street. If you want to know what's really happening in a small town, you don't read the newspaper. You sit at the counter and listen. I ordered coffee and eggs, sat between Hank Miller and Sue Peterson, both local fixtures who'd lived here longer than the stoplight. Morning, Elias, Sue said. Haven't seen you in a while. Been busy. Heard your boy's in town. Hank chimed in. Saw him at the motel. Fancy car. He's visiting. Sue leaned in, dropping her voice. Also saw him at McGinty's Tavern Thursday night. He was with some fellas I didn't recognize. City types. Suits. They didn't look friendly. My stomach tightened. How many? 3, maybe 4. One of them had a real cold look about him. The kind that makes you check your wallet after he walks by. I finished my eggs in silence, paid, and left. Third stop, and the one I'd been dreading, was a phone call to my cousin Ray in Chicago. Ray worked in corporate security, doing background checks and investigations for law firms. We didn't talk often, but when we did, he didn't ask questions he didn't need answers to. Ray, it's Elias. I need a favor. Name it. I need you to run a background check on my son. Financial history, debts, anything unusual. There was a pause. You sure? I'm sure. Give me 24 hours. Ray called back Monday morning. I was sitting on the porch with my second coffee when the phone rang. Elias, you sitting down? Yeah. Your son's in deep, and I mean deep. He's got $43,000 in credit card debt, spread across 7 cards. The condo in Chicago went into foreclosure 4 months ago. He's got a tax lien from the IRS for $86,000. And here's the kicker. He owes money to a private lending group out of Chicago. Shark operation. Barely legal. The kind of people who break kneecaps when you miss payments. How much? $470,000. I closed my eyes. Jesus. It gets worse. The lending group has ties to a development company called Midwest Urban Holdings. They've been buying up rural land, flipping it into subdivisions. And guess who's listed as a consultant on their last 3 projects? Mark. Bingo. This isn't just about him needing money, Elias. He's in bed with these people. The Thorn Meadows project? That's not his idea. It's theirs. They're using him to get to your land. He's their inside man. They wipe his debt. He delivers the property. It's a package deal. My hands were shaking. You're telling me my son sold me out. I'm telling you about your son's drowning, and these people threw him an anchor instead of a rope. He's not thinking straight. He's desperate, and desperate people do stupid things. I thanked Ray, hung up, and sat there staring at the fields. 120 acres of black soil, 3 generations of sweat and blood, and my own son wanted to pave it over to save his own skin. The truth had bobbed back up all right, and it was uglier than I'd imagined. I picked the phone back up and called Angela Reyes, the property attorney. Ms. Reyes, it's Elias Thorne. I need to move that appointment up, today if possible. It's urgent. I can see you at 3. I'll be there. I hung up, walked inside, and went to the fireproof lockbox in my closet. Inside were the important documents: birth certificates, social security cards, Martha's death certificate, and at the bottom, sealed in a plastic sleeve, the original deed to the farm. I pulled it out and unfolded it carefully. The paper was old, yellowed at the edges, but the ink was still clear. And there, in black and white, was the truth that was going to change everything. Mark thought he was playing poker with a senile old man. He didn't know I was the one who taught him how to count the cards. Tuesday morning, Mark showed up with a manila envelope. He didn't knock, just walked in, slapped it on the kitchen table like a summons, and stood there with his arms crossed. "Legal notice," he said. "My attorney is filing a partition action. Since Mom died without a clear will directing the farm solely to you, Iowa intestate succession law says I have a legitimate claim as her heir. You owned it jointly. She's gone. I will inherit her half. That means I can force a sale and claim my portion of the proceeds." I looked at the envelope. Didn't touch it. "You're suing me. I'm protecting my legal rights. There's a difference. You're suing your own father to take his home." Mark's jaw tightened. "You're forcing me to. If you'd just been reasonable from the start, it wouldn't have come to this. But you're stubborn. So now we do it the hard way." He turned to leave, stopped at the door. "You've got 2 weeks to respond. After that, the court gets involved, and this whole thing becomes public record. Everyone in town will know. Is that what you want?" He left before I could answer. I sat there staring at the envelope for a long time. Then I stood up, walked to the hallway, and pulled down the attic ladder. The hinges creaked. Dust swirled in the shaft of morning light. I hadn't been up here in over a year. The attic smelled like old wood and mothballs and memories. Boxes stacked against the rafters. Martha's Christmas decorations in labeled tubs. My father's W-2 uniform in a garment bag. And in the corner, under a tarp, the iron safe. It was a century model, forest green, built like a tank. My grandfather bought it in 1952 to store the deed in important papers during tornado season. The combination hadn't changed in 70 years. 18-4-36, my grandmother's birthday. I spun the dial. 3 clicks. The handle turned. Inside were stacks of documents in plastic sleeves, insurance policies, birth certificates, my discharge papers from the Army, Martha's teaching certificates, and beneath it all, in a thick manila folder marked, "Property do not remove," the farm deed. I pulled it out carefully and carried it down to the kitchen table, spreading it flat in the sunlight. The paper was yellowed at the edges, the ink faded to brown in places, but every word was still legible. I ran my finger along the lines, reading slowly, and a memory surfaced like a fish breaking water. It was a Tuesday in June, 1985, raining hard, the kind of rain that turns the roads to mud and keeps you inside whether you want to be or not. Martha and I were sitting at this same kitchen table with a lawyer named Harold Brennan, a soft-spoken man who'd handled property law in 3 counties for 40 years. "You're sure you want the survivorship clause?" Harold had asked, looking at us over his reading glasses. "Absolutely," Martha said. She had her teacher's voice on, the one that meant she'd made up her mind and wasn't interested in debate. "If something happens to me, this farm goes directly to Elias. No probate, no confusion. And if something happens to him first, it comes to me the same way." "And the no contest clause?" Harold asked. I nodded. "If anyone, and I mean anyone, including our son, tries to challenge this deed or force a sale, they forfeit any claim to inheritance. Period. We've seen too many families torn apart fighting over land. We won't let that happen to us." Harold had drafted it that way. Ironclad, specific. We signed it together, our signatures side by side, witnessed and notarized. Then Harold filed it with the county recorder's office the next morning. "This is bulletproof," he'd said as he handed us the original. "As long as you keep this safe, nobody can touch this property without both of your consent. And when one of you passes, it transfers automatically to the survivor. Clean as a whistle." Martha had squeezed my hand under the table. "Better safe than sorry," she'd whispered. We'd put the deed in the iron safe that same afternoon. I held the document now, 40 years later, and felt Martha's presence in the room like a warm hand on my shoulder. She'd known. Somehow she'd known we needed this protection, not from strangers or creditors, but from our own blood. The deed was titled, "Warranty Deed with Survivorship Rights and No Contest Provision." The language was clear. Upon the death of either party, full title and ownership of the described property shall transfer immediately and absolutely to the surviving party, with no right of challenge, partition, or claim by any heir, descendant, or third party. Any attempt to contest this transfer shall result in immediate and total forfeiture of all inheritance rights related to the estate of the deceased party. Mark thought he was playing a legal game. He thought Martha's death created an opening, a loophole he could exploit. He was wrong. The moment Martha passed, the farm became mine, solely, completely, unchallengeable. And by threatening legal action, by filing for partition, Mark had just triggered the no contest clause. Even if I wanted to leave him something in my will, I couldn't. Not anymore. He'd forfeited it the second he handed me that envelope. I folded the deed carefully, slid it back into its sleeve, and carried it to my truck. Mark thought he was counting cards, but he didn't know the deck was marked. And the dealer, that was me, had been watching him cheat the whole time. A wise man once told me, never interrupt your enemy when he's making a mistake. I decided to let Mark make the biggest mistake of his life. I drove straight to Judge Samuel's house. He answered the door in his slippers, holding a cup of tea and the morning crossword. "Elias," he said, surprised. "Twice in 1 week. This must be serious." "It is." We sat in his study again. I handed him the deed without a word. He put on his reading glasses, scanned the first page, flipped to the second, and then his eyebrows went up. "Well, I'll be damned," he said quietly. "Is it solid?" Samuel read it again, slower this time, his finger tracing the legal language. Then he set it down and looked at me over his glasses. "Elias, this is a masterpiece. Whoever drafted this knew exactly what they were doing. The survivorship provision is standard, but the no contest clause, that's the hammer. The moment Mark filed that partition threat, he triggered it. Even if you wanted to leave him the farm in your will, you legally can't now. He's disqualified himself, so the farm is mine. Lock, stock, and barrel. Upon Martha's death, title transferred to you instantly and absolutely. Mark has zero claim. Legally, morally, practically, zero. If he takes this to court, any judge in Iowa will laugh him out of the room and probably sanction his attorney for filing a frivolous suit. Relief flooded through me, warm and overwhelming. I hadn't realized how tight my chest had been until that moment. "What do you want to do?" Samuel asked. "I can draft a letter to his attorney, citing the deed and the no contest clause. Shut this down before it goes any further." I thought about it. The smart move, the easy move, was to mail the deed to Mark's lawyer and watch the case collapse. End it clean. End it now. But that wouldn't teach Mark anything. He'd slink away, tail between his legs, blaming me for his failures. He'd tell himself I was just a stubborn old man who got lucky. He wouldn't understand what he'd done or why it was wrong. "No," I said. "Don't send anything yet." Samuel frowned. "Why not?" "Because Mark needs to learn a lesson he'll never forget. He needs to stand in front of me and show me exactly who he's become. I need to hear him say it out loud. And then, only then, I'll show him the deed." "That's risky, Elias. He could escalate. Bring those people he's involved with to your door. Let him. I've got the law on my side now. And if those people show up, they're trespassing. I know how to handle trespassers." Samuel leaned back in his chair, studying me. "You're setting a trap. I'm giving him enough rope to hang himself. There's a difference." He smiled, grim but understanding. "You always were a chess player. Martha used to say you thought 3 moves ahead." She was right. I stood to leave. Samuel walked me to the door, his hand on my shoulder. "Be careful," he said. "Family fights are the ugliest kind. Even when you win, you lose something." "I already lost something," I said quietly. "I lost the son I raised. The man standing in my kitchen now, I don't even recognize him. At least this way. Maybe he'll recognize himself." I drove home, the deed locked in my glove box, and sat on the porch with my phone. I dialed Mark's number. He answered on the 3rd ring. "Dad, I want to talk," I said. "No lawyers, no threats. Just you and me. Come to the house Friday evening, 6 o'clock. I'll make dinner." There was a long pause. "You're ready to sign?" "I'm ready to talk. That's all I'm promising." Another pause. "Okay, Friday, 6 o'clock. He hung up. I sat there, watching the sun dip toward the horizon, painting the fields gold. In 3 days, Mark would walk through that door thinking he'd won, thinking he'd broken me. and I'd show him just how wrong he was. They wore expensive leather jackets and cheap cologne. They looked at my fences like they were mere suggestions. I looked at them like targets. Thursday afternoon, I was mending a section of fence near the road when I heard the engine. Not Mark's SUV, something heavier. A black Cadillac Escalade with tinted windows and Illinois plates rolled up slowly and stopped just outside my gate. 2 men got out, both in their 30s, fit, with the kind of casual menace you learn in back alleys, not gyms. The driver wore a leather jacket over a black t-shirt. The passenger had a gold chain thick enough to tow a truck. They didn't wave, didn't introduce themselves, just walked up to the gate like they owned the place. "You the owner?" the driver asked. "I'm Elias Thorne. This is my property. Who are you?" "We're associates of a mutual acquaintance, Mark Thorne. Mark's my son." The driver smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "That right? Well, your son's behind on some payments. Significantly behind. We're here to make sure the situation gets resolved." "What situation?" "The kind where he owes a lot of money to people who don't like waiting. Now, we understand there's a property sale in the works. Something about a farm going on the market. We want to make sure that sale happens. Soon." I set down my wire cutters, straightened up, and looked them both square in the eye. "You're threatening me on my own land." The passenger laughed. "Nobody's threatening anybody, old man. We're just making sure everyone understands the stakes. Your boy's in deep, real deep. If this farm doesn't sell and sell fast, things are gonna get ugly for him. Broken bones ugly. You understand? I understand you're trespassing, and that your vehicle's license plate is Alpha November 5782 Tango. Illinois registration. I'm writing that down." I pulled a pen and a folded receipt from my shirt pocket, wrote down the plate number slowly and deliberately. The driver's smile faded. "You think that scares us?" "No, but it'll help the sheriff identify you when I file the report." The passenger stepped forward, his hand moving toward his jacket. "Listen, you stubborn. Touch that weapon, and you won't leave this property walking," I said, my voice flat and cold. "I'm 72 years old. I've got nothing to lose. You've got everything. Now get off my land before I make a phone call you're going to regret." We stood there, locked in a stare. 10 seconds, 20. The wind moved through the corn, rustling like whispers. Finally, the driver jerked his head toward the car. "Let's go." They climbed back in. The Escalade reversed hard, spitting gravel, and sped off down the road. I waited until they were out of sight, then walked back to the house, my hands shaking now that the adrenaline was draining away. I sat on the porch steps and called Sheriff Tom Ridley. Tom and I went back 30 years. We'd fished the same creek every spring, played poker at the VFW Hall every other Thursday. He'd been to Martha's funeral, helped me carry the casket. "Elias," he answered. "What's going on?" "I just had 2 men from Illinois threaten me on my property, connected to loan sharks by the look of them. They're putting pressure on Mark to sell the farm to cover his gambling debts." Tom's voice went hard. "You get a plate number?" I read it to him. "Black Escalade. The driver had a leather jacket. The passenger wore a gold chain and might have been carrying it. I'll run the plate. If they come back, call 911 immediately. Don't engage. You hear me?" "I hear you." "Elias, is Mark in serious trouble?" "Worse than serious. He owes nearly $500,000 to people who break kneecaps for a living." Tom swore under his breath. "You need protection? I can have a deputy swing by. Keep an eye on the place." "Not yet, but Friday night, Mark's coming over for dinner. If things go sideways, I might need backup. I'll be on call. You call, I'm there in 5 minutes." "Thanks, Tom." I hung up and sat there, staring at my hands. They were rough and scarred from 60 years of work. Hands that had built fences, delivered calves, held my wife as she died. Mark was my son. No matter what he'd done, no matter how far he'd fallen, he was still my blood. And those men, those predators, they'd hurt him if I didn't act. But I couldn't save him by giving up the farm. That would only teach him that betrayal works, that threatening your own father gets you what you want. No, I had to save him in a different way, by showing him the consequences of his choices, by forcing him to face the man he'd become. And if that meant standing between him and those wolves, so be it. I was his father. Protecting him was my job, even when he didn't deserve it. Especially when he didn't deserve it. He was salivating like a coyote in a chicken coop. He couldn't see the trap door beneath his feet because he was too busy looking at the hens. Friday evening, 6 o'clock sharp, Mark's SUV pulled up the drive, but this time, he wasn't alone. A silver Lexus followed behind him. 2 more people stepped out, a man in a pinstripe suit carrying a leather briefcase, and a woman in business attire with a notary stamp dangling from her neck on a lanyard. Mark climbed the porch steps with a smile I hadn't seen in years. Wide, eager, the smile of someone who thinks they've already won. "Dad," he said, extending his hand like we were closing a business deal. "This is Richard Holbrook, my attorney, and this is Patricia, a certified notary. I brought them to make this official. Clean, legal, no confusion." I shook Richard's hand. His grip was damp. Patricia nodded politely, clutching her notary kit like a shield. "Dinner's ready," I said. "Come on in." I'd set the table with Martha's good dishes, the white china with the blue flowers she'd inherited from her mother, 4 place settings, water glasses, cloth napkins folded into triangles. In the center, a pot roast surrounded by carrots and potatoes, steam still rising. Mark's eyes darted to the food, then to me, then to the empty chair at the head of the table. "We don't need to eat, Dad. Let's just handle the paperwork." "Sit," I said, not a request. We sat. I served the food slowly, deliberately, carving the roast with steady hands, spooning vegetables onto plates, pouring water into glasses. The lawyer and notary exchanged glances but said nothing. Mark's knee bounced under the table like a jackhammer. "This looks wonderful, Mr. Thorne," Patricia said, trying to fill the silence. "My wife's recipe," I said. "She always believed you should never do business on an empty stomach. Said it clouds judgment." Mark barely touched his plate. His fork scraped against the china, pushing food around without eating. He kept checking his phone under the table, his face illuminated by the screen's glow. "Dad, can we please eat first?" I said. Richard took a few polite bites. Patricia did the same. I ate slowly, chewing thoroughly, tasting nothing. The clock on the wall ticked loud in the silence. Finally, Mark couldn't take it anymore. He shoved his plate aside, reached into his jacket, and pulled out a thick stack of papers bound with a binder clip. He slapped them on the table between us. "Here," he said, his voice tight. "Purchase agreement. Midwest Urban Holdings is offering $2,300,000 for the property. Full cash offer. 30-day close. You sign today. The money's in your account by the end of the month." He slid the contract toward me, then placed a pen on top. Expensive, heavy, silver with his initials engraved on the clip. "Just sign here, Dad. Bottom of page 12. Patricia will notarize it. And this whole thing is done. You can move into that condo in Florida next week. Beach view. No more winters. No more work. Just peace." I looked at the contract. Didn't touch it. $2 million, I said quietly. 2.3, Mark corrected, leaning forward. "That's well above market value. You won't get a better offer." "And your cut?" Mark's smile faltered for just a second. "What? Your cut? How much of this goes to you?" That's not relevant. The point is, you get financial security. And I, how much, Mark?" He glanced at Richard, who nodded slightly. $400,000, as a finder's fee, for facilitating the sale. $400,000 to sell your father's home, to help you liquidate a depreciating asset, Mark snapped, to give you a comfortable retirement, to pay your gambling debts. The room went still. Richard's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. Patricia's eyes widened. Mark's face flushed red. "That's not—" "I know about the debt, Mark. I know about loan sharks. I know about the men who came to my property and threatened me. I know everything." Mark stood up, his chair scraping hard against the floor. "Then you know I don't have a choice. You think I want this? You think I want to beg my own father to sell his land? I'm drowning, Dad, and you're the only one who can throw me a rope. By selling my home. Yes, by selling a pile of dirt that's been in the family so long you can't see it for what it really is, an opportunity. Mom's gone. You're alone. You don't need 120 acres. You need security, safety, and so do I." I looked at him, really looked at him. His eyes were bloodshot. His hands were shaking. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the cool evening air coming through the window. Is this really what you want? I asked softly. To sell your heritage for a quick check? To pave over the graves of your ancestors so you can walk away clean? Heritage doesn't pay the bills, Mark screamed. His voice cracked. Heritage doesn't stop men from breaking your legs. Sign the damn paper, Dad, please. The mask was fully off now. No more pretense, no more strategy. Just desperation, raw and bleeding. Richard cleared his throat. Mr. Thorne, if you have concerns about the contract terms, we can... I don't have concerns about the contract, I said, cutting him off. I reached under the table, pulled out my own file folder, and set it gently on the table. I have concerns about its legality. Mark's face went pale. What are you talking about? I slid the folder across to Richard. Read that first. Then we'll talk about signatures. The sound of a dropped fork on a hardwood floor can sound like a gunshot when the room is silent enough, and that room was silent as a tomb. Richard opened the folder. His eyes scanned the first page, then the second. His eyebrows climbed higher with each line. The color drained from his face like water from a cracked bucket. This is... He paused, read again, flipped back to the first page. This is a survivorship deed, with a no-contest clause. I added calmly. Mark looked between us, confused. What does that mean? Richard set the document down slowly, like it might explode if handled roughly. He turned to Mark, and I saw something flash across his face. Not just a surprise, anger. The kind of anger lawyers get when they realize they've been handed a losing case. It means, Richard said carefully, that your mother didn't own half this property, not in the way you described. Yes, she did. They bought it together. Joint ownership. Joint ownership with full survivorship rights, Richard corrected. That's different. When your mother passed, her interest in the property didn't enter her estate. It didn't become inheritable. It transferred automatically and immediately to your father. He became the sole owner the moment she died. There was no probate, no division, no inheritance. Mark stared at him. But you said, I said what you told me, based on the information you provided. You told me they owned it jointly as tenants in common. That would have made your mother's half inheritable. But this? He tapped the deed. This is a completely different legal structure. So what are you saying? Richard turned to me, and I saw grudging respect in his eyes. Your father owns this property, 100%. You have no claim, not to half, not to a quarter, not to a single acre. Mark laughed. It was a sharp, broken sound. That's impossible. You said I could force a sale. You said partition. I was wrong. Richard stood up, gathering his briefcase. And I'm formally withdrawing from this matter. Patricia, we're leaving. Patricia stood so fast her chair tipped backward. She grabbed her notary kit and headed for the door without a word. Wait! Mark jumped up, grabbing Richard's arm. You can't just leave. We had a deal. You said... Richard yanked his arm free. I said a lot of things based on bad information. Your father's deed is ironclad. If you'd told me about the survivorship clause and the no-contest provision from the beginning, I never would have taken this case. He turned to me. Mr. Thorne, I apologize for wasting your time. He walked out. Patricia followed. The door closed behind them. The Lexus started. Gravel crunched. Then silence. Mark stood frozen in the middle of the kitchen, staring at the closed door like it might open again and rescue him. When it didn't, he turned to me slowly. What did he mean? No contest provision? I pulled the deed from the folder and held it up. Your mother and I signed this in 1985. We knew what happened to farms when families fought over them. We saw it happen to the Hendersons, the McClellans, the Porters, siblings tearing each other apart, forcing sales, dividing land until nobody had anything worth keeping. We decided that wouldn't happen to us. I pointed to the clause at the bottom. This says that if anyone, including you, tries to contest ownership or force a sale after one of us dies, they forfeit any right to inheritance. Period. Not just the farm. Everything. Mark's legs seemed to give out. He dropped into his chair, his face ashen. So, the partition threat triggered the clause. Even if I wanted to leave you something in my will now, I legally can't. You disqualified yourself the moment you threatened to sue, but I didn't know. Ignorance doesn't change the law. He put his head in his hands. His shoulders started shaking, and then I heard it. Not anger, not defiance, weeping. A man is never as tall as when he kneels to confess his sins, but my son wasn't kneeling for forgiveness. He was kneeling for a bailout. Mark's hands covered his face, but I could see tears squeezing between his fingers. His breath came in short, ragged gasps, like he'd been running for miles and finally collapsed. "They're going to kill me," he whispered. I sat down across from him. Slowly, my joints ached. The chair creaked under my weight. "Who?" "The people I owe. The loan sharks. The associates." His voice was muffled behind his hands, thick with snot and tears. "They gave me until the end of the month. They said if I didn't have the money, they'd make an example." "How much do you actually owe?" Mark lowered his hands. His eyes were red and swollen. He looked 10 years older than he had an hour ago. 470,000, plus interest. It grows every week. How'd it get that high? Poker, online gambling, then casino trips when I thought I could win it back. I kept telling myself one good night, one good hand, and I'd be square. But the losses just kept piling up. He wiped his nose with the back of his hand, leaving a wet streak across his cheek. "I borrowed from private lenders to cover the gambling debts. They said it was low interest, no questions asked. But the interest wasn't low. It was criminal. And when I couldn't pay, they offered me a deal, deliver the farm, and they'd wipe the debt clean. They even set up the development company to make it look legitimate. And you said yes. What choice did I have?" His voice cracked. "They showed me pictures, Dad. Pictures of what they do to people who don't pay. Broken legs, burned cars. One guy had his hand crushed in a vice. I'm not brave. I'm not strong like you. I'm scared." He put his head down on the table, his arms folded beneath it, sobbing like a child. I sat there, watching my son fall apart, and felt something crack inside my chest. This was my boy, the kid I taught to ride a bike, the teenager I drove to college, the man who stood beside me at his mother's funeral and promised he'd visit more. Now he was broken, ruined by his own choices. Yes, but still my son. "Please, Dad," he said, his voice muffled against the table. "Please, you don't have to sell the whole farm. Just 10 acres. Just enough to get them off my back. I'll never ask you for anything again. I'll get help. I'll go to Gamblers Anonymous. I'll change. Just, please. I'm begging you. I could do it. 10 acres on the western edge, away from the house. It wouldn't affect the integrity of the farm. The money would save his life. I'd be the hero father who rescued his son from the wolves. But I'd also be teaching him that betrayal works, that threatening your own father, bringing strangers to intimidate him, forging ahead with partition lawsuits. All of it could be undone with tears and apologies. I'd be telling him that consequences don't exist if you cry hard enough. "Mark," I said quietly, "look at me." He lifted his head slowly. His face was a mess, tear-streaked, blotchy, defeated. "If I give you the money, what's to stop you from gambling it away in 6 months? I won't, I swear. You swore you'd visit your mother before she died. You didn't. You swore you'd call more often. You didn't. You swore you'd be here for me after she passed. You weren't. Your word doesn't mean much right now, son." His face crumpled again. I know I've been a terrible son, but I can change. Just give me a chance. I've been giving you chances for 48 years. The words hung in the air between us, heavy and final. Mark stared at me, and I saw the exact moment he realized I wasn't going to save him. Not like this. Not on his terms. "You're really going to let them hurt me," he said. Not a question. A statement. "No," I said. "I'm going to help you, but not by giving you money, by giving you something harder." "What?" I stood up, walked to the kitchen counter, and picked up the phone. A way out that doesn't cost me my home. Mark watched, confused and terrified, as I dialed, and on the other end, someone answered. I told him, "I can't pull you out of the hole you dug, Mark, but I'll throw you a rope. You have to do the climbing." I set the phone down after making my call and turned back to face my son. He was still slumped in his chair, staring at nothing, his face pale and hollow. "I will not sell this farm," I said. My voice was quiet, but firm as bedrock. "Not 1 acre, not 1 inch, not for you, not for anyone." Mark's eyes closed. A fresh tear rolled down his cheek. "But I am your father," I continued, "and that means something. It has to mean something." He looked up, confused hope flickering across his face like a candle in wind. I pulled out the chair across from him and sat down. "I've got an emergency fund. Money your mother and I set aside for disasters, medical emergencies, catastrophic repairs. It's not millions. It's $60,000. That's what I can give you. That's not enough to—" "It's enough to buy you time," I said, cutting him off. "Enough to cover the interest for a few months. Enough to show those people you're serious about paying them back. They won't accept a payment plan. They will when the sheriff's department starts looking into their lending practices. I called Tom Ridley while you were sitting there. He's already running those license plates, already building a case for illegal lending and intimidation. Those men who came to my gate, they committed a felony, extortion, criminal threatening. Tom's offering them a deal, accept a structured payment plan, or face federal charges." Mark's mouth opened, then closed. You did that?" "I did, because you're my son. But here's the condition." I leaned forward, holding his gaze. "You move back here, to the farm. You take the guest room. You work the land every morning before you go to your job in town." "What job?" "The one I'm getting you at Henderson's Hardware. Dan owes me a favor. It pays $12 an hour. Every penny goes toward your debt after you cover your basic expenses. And on weekends you work here, mending fences, feeding cattle, splitting wood, whatever needs doing." Mark stared at me. "You want me to be your farmhand? I want you to learn what it means to earn something, to build something with your hands instead of gambling it away with cards. You'll live here, work here, and pay off your debt 1 week at a time. It'll take years, Mark, maybe 5, maybe more, but at the end of it, you'll be free, really free, not from debt, but from the man you've become. And if I say no, then you're on your own. I'll give you the $60,000 as a final gift, and you can use it however you want. But after that, I'm done. You won't inherit this farm. You won't get another dollar. And when those men come for you, I won't answer the phone." The silence stretched between us like a river neither of us wanted to cross. Mark looked around the kitchen, at the old cabinets Martha had painted 20 years ago, at the window over the sink where she used to watch the birds, at the worn linoleum floor that had seen 3 generations of thorns walk across it. "I don't know how to farm," he said quietly. "Neither did I when I was your age. My father taught me. Now I'll teach you. What if I fail? Then you fail. But at least you'll fail trying, instead of running." Mark wiped his face with both hands, dragging his palms down his cheeks. He looked exhausted, defeated, but somewhere underneath it all, I saw something I hadn't seen in years. Relief. "Okay," he whispered. "Okay, I'll do it. I'll stay, I'll work." He met my eyes. "Thank you, Dad." I nodded once. "Don't thank me yet. Wait until you've spent a January morning breaking ice in the cattle trough at 5 in the morning. Then we'll see if you're still grateful." For the first time in months, Mark smiled. It was small and broken, but it was real. "One more thing," I said, standing up. "You attend Gamblers Anonymous every week, non-negotiable. Tom's already found a group in Pella that meets Tuesday nights. You miss one meeting, the deal's off. I'll go, I promise." "Good. Now get your things from the motel. You move in tomorrow. We start at 5:30. Mark stood, his legs shaky beneath him. He looked like a man who'd just survived a car crash, battered, stunned, but alive. He walked to the door, stopped, turned back. "I'm sorry," he said, "for all of it, for threatening you, for bringing those people here, for being a terrible son." "You're not terrible," I said. "You're lost. There's a difference. Now let's get you found." He nodded and left. I stood alone in the kitchen, listening to his SUV start and drive away. The pot roast sat cold on the table, untouched. I covered it with foil and put it in the refrigerator. Then I walked to the window and looked out at the fields, bathed in silver moonlight. Martha would have been proud, not of Mark, Not yet, but of this, of choosing the hard love over the easy love, of teaching instead of enabling. I hope I'm doing this right, I said to the empty room. The house creaked, the wind whispered through the eaves, and somewhere, I swear, I felt her hand on my shoulder. You can't cheat a harvest. You plant, you tend, you wait. Mark was finally learning that life doesn't have a fast-forward button. 6 months later, I woke to the sound of Mark's alarm going off down the hall, 5:30 in the morning, right on time. I lay in bed for a moment, listening to his footsteps on the floor, the creak of the bathroom door, the rush of water in the pipes, sounds I'd gotten used to again after 4 years of silence. By the time I made it to the kitchen, Mark was already dressed in work clothes, jeans worn thin at the knees, a flannel shirt with a torn pocket, boots I'd given him from my own closet because his city shoes had fallen apart the first week. "Coffee's ready," he said, pouring 2 cups. We drank in comfortable silence, watching dawn break over the east field through the kitchen window. Pink and gold spread like watercolor across the horizon. "South fence needs attention," I said. "Cattle pushed a post loose yesterday. I'll get it after breakfast." We ate oatmeal, plain, with a little brown sugar. The same breakfast I'd eaten for 50 years. Mark had complained the first week, asking for bacon and eggs. I'd told him bacon was for Sundays, if we earned it. He didn't ask again. After breakfast, we walked the fence line together. Mark carried the post driver, his hands wrapped in duct tape to protect the blisters that had finally turned to calluses. He'd hated the blisters, complained every night for the first month, soaking his hands in Epsom salt, cursing under his breath, but he kept showing up. Every morning, 5:30, we reached the loose post. Mark set down the driver, tested the post with his hand and nodded. "Needs to come out and reset," he said. "You're learning." He smiled, just a little, and got to work. I watched him dig around the base of the post, his movements efficient now, economical. The first time he'd tried this, he'd spent 3 hours and dug the hole in the wrong place. Now he could do it in 40 minutes. The sharks, as we'd started calling them, were gone. Sheriff Tom had made good on his threat. The Illinois loan operation folded under federal scrutiny, and Mark's debt was restructured through a legitimate credit counseling service. He paid $250 a month, every month, without fail. The money came from his wages at Henderson's Hardware, where he worked weekdays, stocking shelves, cutting keys, and mixing paint. Dan Henderson told me Mark was the best employee he'd had in 10 years. Showed up on time, never complained, worked through lunch when they were short-staffed. "Kid's a different person," Dan had said last week over coffee at the diner. "Whatever you're doing, Elias, it's working." What I was doing was letting him fail, letting him struggle, letting him learn that life doesn't hand you anything, and that the only way out is through. Mark finished resetting the post and tested it, pushing hard with both hands. It didn't budge. "Solid," he said. "Good work." We walked back toward the house. The sun was fully up now, warming our backs. A red-tailed hawk circled over the west pasture, hunting mice in the tall grass. "I've been thinking," Mark said as we reached the barn, "about that oak tree, the one you wanted to cut down." "Yeah." He looked at it, standing tall and proud near the property line, its branches thick with summer leaves. "I wanted to tear it down to make room for houses, but now I look at it and I remember swinging from that tire. You pushed me higher and higher until I thought I'd fly off into the sky. You almost did once. Scared your mother half to death." Mark smiled. "I remember. She made you lower the rope 6 inches. We stood there, looking at the tree. I'm glad you didn't sell," he said quietly. "I would have blown the money, gambled it away in 6 months, maybe less, and then I'd have nothing. No farm, no father, no future. Just debt and shame and an empty bank account. I know. How'd you know? Because I know you. I always have. Even when you forgot who you were, I remembered." Mark looked at me, his eyes wet, but his jaw set firm. "I'm going to make you proud, Dad. You already are. The land doesn't belong to us. We belong to the land." Finally, my son understood the difference. 1 year later, the debt was half paid. Mark had moved out of the guest room and into a small apartment above the hardware store in town, but he still came to the farm every weekend, still worked the land, still showed up at 5:30 on Saturday mornings with coffee and a willingness to mend whatever needed mending. We were walking the property line on a Sunday afternoon, the air crisp with the first hint of autumn. The corn had been harvested, the fields lying fallow and brown, resting before winter. Mark had helped with the harvest this year, running the combine I'd rented, learning the rhythm of the work. We climbed the high ridge at the northwest corner of the property, the spot where you could see all 120 acres spread out below, like a patchwork quilt. My grandfather used to bring me here when I was a boy, telling me stories about breaking the land with horses and hand plows. Mark stood beside me, hands in his pockets, looking out over the farm. "Thank you," he said. "For what? For not selling? For saying no? For making me stay?" I didn't respond, just let him talk. "I've been going to GA for a year now," he continued. 52 meetings, haven't missed one, and every week they ask the same question. "What would you have lost if you'd kept gambling?" And every week, I have the same answer. "Everything. I would have lost everything." He turned to me. "You saved my life, Dad. Not by giving me money, by refusing to give it to me." "I didn't save you, Mark. You saved yourself. I just gave you the tools." "Still, thank you." We stood in silence for a moment, watching a pair of crows wheel across the sky. "I went to see Angela Reyes last week," I said. "The property attorney." Mark looked at me, surprised. "Why?" "To update my will." His face went carefully neutral. "Oh, the farm goes to you," I said. "When I'm gone, it's yours." Mark opened his mouth, but I held up a hand. "But there are conditions. I had Angela set up what's called a life estate trust. You'll own the farm, but you can never sell it. Not 1 acre. You can work it, live on it, pass it to your children someday, but you can't liquidate it. It stays in the family, or it goes to the county as conservation land." Mark stared at me. "You're still protecting it, even after you're gone." "I'm protecting you, from yourself, from the temptation to take the easy way out when times get hard. And they will get hard, Mark. Droughts, bad markets, medical bills. There'll be moments when selling looks like the smart choice. This trust makes sure you can't make that choice. And if I don't want the farm on those terms, then you don't get the farm. It goes to conservation, and you walk away with nothing." Mark looked out over the fields again, the farmhouse in the distance, the barn with its weathered red paint, the oak tree standing sentinel by the road. "I'll take it," he said. "On your terms. I'll take it, and I'll honor it, and I'll pass it to my kids the same way." "Are you planning on having kids?" He smiled. "I'm planning on getting my life together enough to deserve a family, maybe in a few years. If I can find someone patient enough to put up with a recovering gambler who smells like hay most weekends." I laughed. It felt good. "Your mother smelled like chalk dust from teaching." I didn't mind. "You think she'd be proud of how I turned out?" "I think she's watching, and I think she's smiling." We started walking back down the ridge, taking the long way around the property line, past the creek where Mark used to catch frogs as a boy, past the apple trees Martha had planted the year we got married. "You know what I realized?" Mark said as we walked. "The deed didn't save the farm. You did. You could have sold, taken the easy way out, let me sink or swim on my own. But you didn't. You held the line, and in holding it, you taught me how to hold a line too. The deed helped," I said. "But you're right. Paper only matters if the person holding it has the backbone to stand behind it." We reached the house as the sun dipped toward the horizon, painting everything gold. Mark's truck was parked by the barn, ready for his drive back to town. "Same time next Saturday?" he asked. 5:30. "Don't be late." "I won't." He climbed into his truck, started the engine, then rolled down the window. "Hey, Dad?" "Yeah, I love you. I don't say it enough, but I do." My throat tightened. "I love you too, son." He drove off, dust trailing behind him, like a memory fading into the distance. I stood on the porch, watching until his taillights disappeared around the bend. Then I looked out at the fields, my father's fields, my grandfather's fields, and felt the weight of all those years settle on my shoulders like a familiar coat. The land doesn't belong to us. We belong to the land. And finally, after everything, my son understood the difference. If you made it this far, Thank you for listening to an old man's story. If you believe family is worth fighting for, and that some things shouldn't be sold at any price, leave a comment below. Tell me what you'd fight to protect, and hit that subscribe button. I've got more stories to tell, and I'd be honored if you'd stick around to hear them. Until next time, stay strong, stay wise, and remember, legacy isn't what you leave behind, it's what you refuse to let go of.